The Trump administration is taking a 10% stake in the tech company Intel, a move President Trump is calling a great deal for America and for Intel. It's something some bona fide conservatives are calling socialism. Republican Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky posted that the government owning part of Intel would be a step towards socialism and called it a terrible idea. Conservative radio host Eric Erickson said, quote, "This is socialism with an R next to its name." And the editorial board of the conservative magazine National Review wrote this headline, quote, "The government shouldn't get into the chip business."
That's a bit of an understatement.
Democratic Governor Gavin Newsom of California used this to
I gotta say,
continue his social
I gotta
media
say, the first day I was skeptical, but when you laugh out loud at like 30 different memes, and then you look at Fox News clips, and they really have just all lost their minds.
They're freaking out.
They've lost. How could they
call his wife?
I'm sorry. You're just like, whoa. Okay.
Maybe he's onto something.
They look like Democrats have looked over the past 10 years. So anyway,
anywho,
it's interesting.
Let's bring in New York Times reporter covering Wall Street, Lauren Hirsch. Her latest piece for the Times calls President Trump, quote, "corporate America's newest activist investor."
And it really hasn't started with just Intel. You've seen it with NVIDIA. You've seen it with other companies where the president really calls CEOs in, pressures them, attacks them, and then comes in and makes a deal with them. Tim Cook, I mean, we could go down the list.
Yeah, you know, one of the key signifiers that this was going to be a trend was the acquisition of U.S. Steel, a American iconic company. We sold it to Japan's Nippon. President Trump on the campaign trail had said he did not want the deal to go through. He ultimately let it go through with this key addition that the U.S. takes a stake in the company. And everyone I spoke to said there was no reason why taking a stake in company would address any of the national security concerns that were with that deal. And ever since then, we've seen him step up and kind of his willingness and desire to take a role in the way that corporate America runs its business. And Intel seems to be this, so far, you know, grand combination. But talking to sources, there's more. There could be more on the way.
Well, you know, Jay Mart, this is something we talked about on Friday, where you have the president who is getting involved in absolutely everything, wants to be involved in everything, wants deals out of everything, wants money out from everybody, wants money from our allies, wants money from our rivals, so the tariff part of it, wants money from Ivy League schools, wants money from tech companies. Well, you know, I mean, he's using the leverage that only the president of the United States has, try to get as much money as he can. And here, 10% stake. And again, a cornerstone, a company that's a cornerstone of the technological revolution since 1990.
Joe, the invisible hand is pretty damn visible these days.
Very visible.
It seems like from the White House. Yeah, no, 10% stake in Intel. Yeah, go ahead at NVIDIA. You can sell your chips to China, but we're going to need a little taste, as they say in Philadelphia. We're going to need some of that for us here too, Jensen Huang. I mean, it's look, it does show the extent to which Trump is not committed to any kind of conservative project, right? There is no Trumpism besides the idea of Trump's own success. He's not philosophical at all. But boy, Joe, besides Rand Paul, the response is deafening on an elected official.
Hey, Jay Mart, why don't we just underline that fact? That's the most. Actually, we all focus so much on Donald Trump with all of these stories we've done over the first hour and a half. Really, story's not really about Donald Trump. As I said last week, the story is about the Republicans in Congress who have completely turned their back on everything they ever told their constituents they supported.
Well, which is why a lot of them vote with their feet, Joe. I mean, going back to 2017, the exodus of congressional Republicans, some voluntarily, some less so, I mean, up to and including the last couple of weeks, folks like Chip Roy, up-and-coming member of the House, Ted Cruz acolyte from the hill country of Texas, says, you know what, I think I'd rather give up my congressional seniority, go back to Austin and be the state AG, because they understand the bargain here. The bargain bargain is their voters want them to be loyal to Donald Trump, don't care about the particulars of policy differences, and just don't really much want them to stand
Right.
up for conservative principle. And so if you're a guy like Chip Roy, you say, I got it. I've done it. I'm not going to do it any longer. So I think the response is silence, but it's also folks just headed for the exits, Joe.
Well, you look, Mike, at Chip Roy. There's a perfect example. Here's a guy that stood up last year, said, what have we done to reduce spending? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. We should be ashamed of ourselves, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Other members of the Freedom Caucus saying the same thing. And then they all rolled over, Chip Roy included. They all rolled over. Almost all of them rolled over, except maybe one or two, maybe Massey. I don't know where Massey ended up. But this bill, the biggest bill in the history of the Republic, passes. The biggest spending bill ever. The highest deficits coming ever. The highest national debt coming ever, adds $20 trillion over the next decade to the debt. This lumps on another $4 trillion to that. They do nothing. So if you're Chip Roy, what do you say? You say, okay, I said I was going to come to Washington and I was going to fight to do what Republicans used to do, which was balance a budget 4 years in a row.
Yeah.
And they don't do it, so they just quit.
Chip Roy is probably the perfect example of what happens when your frustration as a Republican, conservative Republican politician, and your fear of what might happen.
I was going to say, you know what's not frustrating?
What?
Standing up to the leadership and say, you want to fight?
None of them do that.
You want to fight? Because this is what happens when you get enough people. You go, you want to fight? I would love to fight you. It'll only make me more popular in my home district. I'll only be, let's fight.
Well, they're not fighting over
Nobody
things
will.
like Intel.
Nobody
They're
will.
not fighting
Well,
over
right, I know,
things
that's what I'm
like
saying.
that.
It's
Yeah.
insane. They're quitting. They're not fighting.
On basics.
So, Lauren, on the Intel and all the tech bros who go into the White House, into the Oval to speak with the president, what about the board of Intel? What does the board have to say about this, or any of the boards involved?
So the interesting thing here is obviously President Trump has a very big stick, to use a lack of a better word, right? There's a carrot and the stick, and I don't think they're saying a whole lot. I don't think the board really felt like they had a choice. They had taken the money through the CHIPS Act under President Biden. The money was there. They had allocated it. They were planning to spend it in a certain way. You saw President Trump going after the CEO of Intel very publicly.
Yeah.
And then when the president says, I would like a stake in your company rather than cash, there's not much they can do. But my reporting indicates, I think there's some concern about the way in which this all went down, which is a little.
Well, there should. That is classic understatement. There should be all across the business community
change
in
of
America.
yes,
Yeah,
yes,
those
yeah.
who once
Yeah.
said they supported the free market.
And I should say, I've spoken to lawyers, to bankers, all of their clients who have taken on money through
Yeah.
the CHIPS Act realize that they're vulnerable. They could be next, and they're worried.
Really quickly, but before you go, Jay Powell.
Yeah.
Looks like a rate cut this week.
It looks like that's the indication he gave last week. So something for
We'll be watching.
President Trump to be happy about.
New York Times reporter Lauren Hirsch, thank you so much. Her latest piece is available to read online now. Senior political columnist for Politico, Jonathan Martin, thank you as well.